Red Booth Show. On tonight's episode, I have a very important topic to discuss with you, and I have several guests on the show that are going to be giving us information about the current situation with forced vaccinations and laws that have been being passed or are trying to be passed right now in California, as well as in other states in the United States. So come and join us. All right. So we have with us today Athena Severi of Ladies with Babies.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. And Laureen Monty, who is a lawyer.
Hello.
Hello. And also Andromeda Edison. And you are a political fighter.
I guess that's a good qualification. Sounds good. Business owner and political fighter, yeah.
Very cool. And actually all of us are moms.
Yes.
Me as well. So we're here to discuss something that's very important to us, which is the recent bill, which you all know about, is the SB 277, which has been basically trying to be passed since, I think, February, to get everybody that's in public schools and private schools to have to take all of the vaccinations that the government is giving them on a schedule that they're saying has to be those vaccinations and exactly as they're saying.
And daycare.
And daycare. So basically, if you're in any of the school systems, other than homeschooling, you have to take these vaccinations. And it started, I know, based off of this situation at Disneyland where the measles was basically being spread through a certain group of people. But some people in the news are reporting that it caused death.
Moved today to impose one of the nation's strictest vaccination laws. The state assembly voted to require that nearly all public school children get their shots or be homeschooled. The bill gained momentum after a measles outbreak that started at Disneyland and killed more than 100 people.
Which I understand to be actually false.
Yes.
Okay.
Not a single person died from the measles from the Disneyland outbreak.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
But that sort of was the trigger for this bill that's now being basically almost passed, and it's now going to Governor Brown, right?
The first step is going back to the Senate
Okay.
to approve certain amendments, which is expected to be approved.
The California Senate you're talking, right?
California Senate, and
Right.
then straight to the governor's desk.
Okay. So obviously, you guys have been very involved in this. I know that Athena is sort of here to represent just mothers that have been going and even going up to the Capitol and speaking with people up there. So you guys are very involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found very interesting, I have a group of over 2,000 mothers, and they all have different points of view on many different topics. But what's very interesting to me is despite the fact that some of them vaccinate, some of them don't vaccinate, this bill is not really about the vaccinations. It's really more about infringing on your medical choices for your children. And so I know you know more about the laws when it comes to that, but one thing I wanted to actually ask Andromeda, because I know you've been clarifying this for a lot of people, there's not that many people that understand even what SB means. Can you kind of explain a little bit about that for us?
I can explain the process. There's actually a process of anybody in California can present a bill. You can go to your representative, an assembly member, or a senator and say, I want to present this bill. They can go, great, I'll be the author, you'll be the sponsor. If you go to your assembly member, it's an AB, assembly bill. If you go to your senator, it's an SB, Senate bill. So it depends on who you decide to go with. And then you can, as a citizen, get a bill pushed through government with the help of your representative. So this process is particular. It's Pan's origination. He doesn't have a sponsor behind it. It was his origination on this particular bill.
All right. So basically, this show is, I want people who are in this area in Los Angeles to know about what's going on. And I know that a lot of people are concerned because they want their children to be protected. They don't want their children to get sick. The whole concept behind this is to protect everybody, right? Yes. To give everyone these vaccinations, and that it's irresponsible not to do that. That's the concept that's out there generally, right? But there is a small percentage of people in this area who don't feel that way and who feel that, they should have options and things. So my opinion on it is that to force people who don't agree to do something like that with their children, that's not really okay with me. Like, it's kind of crossing the lines and boundaries of like the constitutional rights and things like that. I totally understand that there's people that do vaccinate their children, and that's also their choice to do that. Like the concept of it being like, well, if your child's not vaccinated, then it could get my child sick. But then if the vaccination theory is really protecting everybody, then the people who are vaccinated, should be fine based on that, right?
Right, and let me just answer that, the consideration, and it's very valid, that if you don't vaccinate, then you're going to get my child sick. Obviously, if your child's vaccinated, then theoretically your child shouldn't get sick. And then there's an argument about, well, what of those kids that can't vaccinate? It is a lie that we have a state that is not protected. The fact is less than 1% children being admitted to kindergarten are not vaccinated, less than 1%. California has the highest vaccination rate, one of the highest vaccination rates in the country. The measles outbreak has been, in my opinion, used to push this along because the proponents are actually working on people's fear. And it was interesting because in the last hearing, the Health Committee of Assembly, Senator Pan actually said that the reason the outbreak, and I question the word outbreak, they use all these really words that engender fear. The reason it did not get out of hand is because people are vaccinated. So my question to you, Senator Pan, is you've just admitted on the air in front of everybody that there is no problem. And as a lawyer, I have a lot of concerns because I am a mother of a child of 3. I believe in selective vaccinations. I've had one vaccination for her, but it was on my own volition, my own choice, and my own decision because I am her parent. So as a mother, I have concerns of forcing my child to do things that could, I believe, ultimately harm her. From a lawyer, I have a lot of concerns. This invokes many, many constitutional provisions. In the first place, the freedom of religion. Now, the freedom of religion is protected by the state and the federal government. There is the Establishment Clause and the free practice. This was actually infringed on the free practice. There are many, many religions who do not believe in medical treatment, do not believe in using aborted fetal cells. Senator Pan said, and it was not true, that there's no aborted fetal cells in vaccinations. The fact is, the Merck labels says there are derivatives in many vaccines. That is against the Christian religion, and there are many religions you don't even have to be, according to the Supreme Court, you don't have to be in a recognized.
You're saying they have aborted fetus cells?
It's a derivative of it, yes.
In vaccines.
In the vaccinations.
That's how they grow it.
That's
they
how they
grow
grow
it in an aborted fetal cell. They use it to grow because you have to grow a vaccine in a cell. It has to be grown somewhere. So they've grown some of them in aborted fetal cells, which, based on some people's religious beliefs, whether they're with organized religion, as she was saying, or not, they don't believe that that is something you should put in another person's body because that would be supporting abortion.
I got it.
So
Okay.
it's their religious choice.
I got
So
it.
the Supreme Court has stated that the only way you could actually infringe on protected constitutional rights is to have a compelling state interest.
Mm-hmm.
As we've just discussed a few minutes ago, the compelling state interest is not present. They're trying to use fear-mongering and, in my opinion, inaccurate statistics to create a compelling state interest. But there really isn't a danger.
Right.
We had an outbreak of measles. It was contained.
Right.
That is their compelling state interest in order to infringe upon religious rights. Now, there's also, if there
Religious rights also because, for example, there's a small percentage of parents in California who sign a waiver to put their kids in school. They sign a waiver to say they're not going to follow the vaccination schedule, and that's a religious exemption form, right?
and there's a personal belief exemption form. But
Okay.
yes, there is a religious.
Okay.
And so the Supreme Court has said that if there's less restrictive means, they must do that. And there are many, many less restrictive means for this. In fact, the bill already that became law is working, where they have personal belief exemptions and religious. It is working. So to go this far is a huge leap.
I did want to just add one thing. I actually spoke with an assembly member just a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, who thought we were just taking away personal belief and that religious belief was going to stay. It's actually not true because religious belief falls under personal belief. If you take away personal belief, both of them are being lost. So an assembly member in the assembly who was voting thought that religious was staying.
It's just shocking to me the more that I hear about this, like how misinformed everybody is, and in the whole thing. I mean, even in the media, like the stuff that I've seen on the news, and then hearing what some of the senators say. And I've actually tuned in and watched a bit of the actual hearing itself.
I've been present at most of them.
I think that I've heard that. Yeah, you probably get to know a lot of those politicians up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm surprised. You know, beginning this year, knew nothing about California politics. Now I know a lot.
Well, I mean, the biggest concern for me, honestly, is that a mother, who is the maker of this child, is the one who should decide what's to be done. I mean, you get into like, yeah, there's people who are considered to be abusive parents or something like that, and that's where the state can come in, and and that can get kind of abused, I think. But now we're talking about something you're putting into your body, and there's also this whole other thing that people talk about, that these vaccinations can cause harm to people.
Right.
So now most people don't think that's the case. They mostly think it's all safe, and since so many people are vaccinated, it's not a problem for them, and that's fine. But if somebody chooses not to because they find out that it has mercury in it or something like that, then to me that should be something that's the parent's choice to do that.
Right. One thing I'd like to say about this, I have a son who's now 7 years old. And when he was 2 months old, the pediatrician said to go ahead and get him vaccinated. Okay, no problem. And when I was a child, I think I received about 10 vaccines altogether. That's like the full battery of what I received from birth through, high school. My son, he was 2 months old, about this big, and they gave him 5 different things all at once, okay? And they just said, that's what we do. It's perfectly safe. I'm a new mother. Okay, I agree. So my son spiked a very high fever, and this continued for 4 or 5 days. I had to take him to the emergency room. I was scared for his life. I started to research things, and I realized that there can be some really severe reactions, right? So thank goodness that he's okay, right? I didn't continue because I was afraid that something drastic could happen to him, right? Now, he is 7 years old. He absolutely loves school. We put him in a private school. He's a genius child, not because I'm his mother. He's actually two grade, I know. He's 2 grade levels ahead, right? He wants to be a scientist. He could read and write at the age of 3. If this were to pass, I would have to take my son out of school, because in order to get a medical exemption, you have to have something extremely severe happen. And there's no way to know what would actually occur with my son. I've gotten him a blood test, and his his allergic reaction level is extremely high. So how do we know? And that's kind of where they're trying to put parents. And, there's no real options if this bill actually passes.
The thing that really freaks me out is the idea that the government here thinks that they can know better than the parents. And that's the thing that worries me. And I know there's rules and there's laws set to protect everybody, and I understand that. And I do think there are those very few parents who are, crazy and they do bad things. But
in any subject.
Yeah, in anyone. But most mothers and most parents love their children and care about them, and they, to me, have inalienable rights to do what they feel with those children.
And let's talk about the children and what they're being deprived. The California state constitution guarantees my child and all the other children an education. But Senator Pan is proposing that unless I go with the full schedule, that she cannot have an education. And we have learned from Brown versus Board of Education that separate is not equal. And if you take my child away because she's partially vaccinated or not vaccinated at all and say homeschool, not to mention, personally, I don't have the ability. I'm a single mother. What am I supposed to do? But beyond that, it takes away her right to education. Now she's going to have to compete with children who have education. Yeah. What about college? What about being able to get into society and compete?
And there's a whole new adult forced vaccination bill that's coming out.
That's also being pushed through for daycares.
Yeah, it's just starting with the kids.
Yeah, Nick Ferguson actually made a really valid point in one of his speeches where he talked about, where do the NFL recruit from? They recruit out of college. Where does college recruit out of high school? If we are homeschooling our children because we choose not to vaccinate, that now means they're not allowed to be in high school. So they'll never get to play in professional sports. So I have a son, she's got 2 boys. I've got a daughter who loves soccer. You know, it's kind of like, so if I decide
So,
that, I have to now forfeit her possibilities.
Let's play the devil's advocate and say, well, then why don't you just vaccinate your kids and stop being a, problem?
The science argument is a hard argument because there's scientists on both sides who say one thing, there's another scientist who says another thing. I'm not a scientist. My reasoning behind it is we are still learning so much about the human body. 10, 15 years ago, we were taking out our tonsils, we were taking out our gallbladders, we were taking out our appendixes because we didn't really know and understand what they do. Now we don't do that, or we try not to do that because we know what they do. We are learning. We don't totally understand cancer yet. If we did, it would be cured. We don't. We're still learning, and there are brilliant people working on that. So while we're still learning about the body, you can't mandate me to put something that I'm worried might be a risk based on my research. Aluminum, mercury, formaldehyde, detergent, all these things that are in them, I've read, I'm educated. I'm saying, no, I'm not going to do that until you have done the science, because they haven't tested all the vaccines. They just haven't.
And the schedule, right?
They haven't tested the combinations. They haven't tested the schedules. We have no idea what the long term is. So yes, they're effective.
So it's like we're being guinea pigs, basically.
I'm not willing to have my oldest child be the test to see if I've got a reverse reaction. So now my other kids can get their medical exemption. I'm not.
Yeah, I mean,
based on my education, I'm smart. I'm a business owner. I'm not one of those radical crazy ones. I've actually read the stuff.
Yeah.
So, and science is amazing.
Yeah.
But we need to get further.
I agree. I mean, basically, from what I understand, is the kids would have to take a very large amount of vaccines within like a year, like something like 60 vaccines or something they would have to take.
It's
I don't
not
know exactly.
60. I think there's 10 vaccines they have to do within a very short period of time.
Okay.
And there's also
Is it
the
60
very last
That's the number of shots. Including boosters.
Including boosters.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 60 shots.
Yes.
There is also a clause in there that any vaccine drug that the department deems appropriate. Let me speak to that issue.
What?
From a constitutional standpoint,
That's like a carte blanche to like do whatever they
from
want.
a constitutional standpoint, it's unconstitutionally vague, because you cannot have something in a law that is vague. And when you start saying, by the way, populace, of course, we're not agreeing, our representatives are, you agree to this, and we could just come along and put anything we want in. Now, there was big objection to that. And Senator Pan says, okay, we'll put in there, you could have a personal belief exemption for that. This is where this bill is even more discriminatory. You have people who are not as educated. You have people who don't have the money. They're on Medi-Cal. So they're just going to go with the program. They're going to go with this new bill. And this takes away our informed consent. The cornerstone of our medical institution is informed consent. You're taking away my right to choose. Not only are you making me have these vaccines or put it in my child, but you're putting in there a catch-all saying anything we deem will be appropriate. What is appropriate? What is appropriate? Years ago, we have found for medical science is not appropriate now.
Well, okay, so here's something that I really want to talk about. Basically, the way that things get passed in the Senate, right? This bill was going to be disapproved originally, right?
But it wasn't.
There was a health committee.
There was a
meeting
health committee,
Okay.
and the overwhelming
in the Senate.
temperature was that it was not going to pass.
Right.
And then Senator Karen Lou, who was the head of the committee, said, Senator Pan, looks like your bill's not going to pass. I'll give you a week to amend it. In the meantime, there's a whole revamping of the makeup of the people on it. People are taken off.
Off the committee, basically.
Off the committee.
So there's always people that think it's a bad idea in the committee, in the Senate committee.
Yes.
They find out that they're going to disapprove it, and so they replace them.
Replace some of them.
Others who were on the fence got pretty heavily hit.
Money changed hands.
We
So
suspect.
they were paid off.
We suspect. The evidence is there that they were paid off.
How do you know they were given money?
There was the Sacramento Bee article,
Okay.
where it specifically laid out where some of the money from the pharmaceutical companies has gone. It was proven, based on records, that $95,000 has gone to Senator Pan, who is the author of this bill, who, as I said earlier, has no sponsor.
No official sponsor.
No official sponsor.
But he's received $95,000.
$95,000 from the pharmaceutical companies.
That's very persuasive.
Yeah, just a little. I mean, if I got $95,000, I don't know.
So, yeah. Now, I'm not sure. I do know that the corruption that can occur in politics has a lot to do with money. I think it's the basis of all of these things that shouldn't be happening is money. And when there's giant corporations that have billions of dollars and they want to make everyone have to spend money to get these shots in their children, I mean, we're talking 17 million people just in this area.
Right.
Just in, LA, Orange County, Ventura, this whole area is going to have to get this.
There's a couple other statistics I've heard. One is if you were to take the lobbying groups and just rank them in order of how much money a lobbying group has given to government.
Right.
Pharmaceuticals is the first one, and it's double the second one.
Yeah.
Which is amazing, just that one datum alone. There's another datum where there was a political activist who was trying to get on the news, and he actually spoke with a news correspondent who said, during off-politics years, 70 to 80% of my funding comes from pharmaceutical companies for commercials, for news broadcasts. And he has fired people before for bringing somebody on the show that lost him one of his clients.
Well, that's the whole problem. See, like
Money, yeah.
My show is independent, so I can talk about anything I want on my show, which is great.
We appreciate that.
But a lot of these big news channels are sponsored by drug commercials. I mean, you see the commercials; they're on those big networks. So they're getting basically funded by the drug companies, and they're not going to bring this stuff up. They're not going to talk about the corruption that's going on. They're not going to talk about the people being paid off. They're not going to talk about the violations of constitutional rights and things like that. So honestly, it's a really shady situation. I have some friends who think it's a law that's equal to don't smoke in the car with your kids. Like it's just being safe and you're just being protecting your kids. And they think that, anybody who has a problem with it is crazy. But I think that's kind of the way that the mass media is treating it. They're looking at it like it's this radical group of people. We're made to look crazy if you have any disagreements with it. But if you find out more about it, it's actually pretty worrisome.
It's very worrisome. And you look at who are the victims. Our children are the victims.
Yeah.
Our children whose little bodies are going to be subject to these big political, money changing and everything else. We have elected officials that have promised, taken an oath, to do what their constituents want. And overwhelmingly, when the polls are taken, overwhelmingly people are against it.
Right.
And a big reason they're against it is because it's government going over the
parents'
authority.
rights.
There is
nothing to do with vaccines in most cases.
Yeah.
Legally, there's what's a principle of excessive police powers of the state. And the state can police the state for a lot of things. But where they can't, according to our founding fathers and the Supreme Court, where they can't do it is where it's infringing on constitutional rights. When you're infringing upon constitutional rights, the freedom of education in the state, the religious freedoms, that's when the police powers cannot go there.
Yeah.
In addition, when they're arbitrary and oppressive.
Yeah.
They're very, very oppressive.
Right.
Because they're taking a group of people that are actually trying to do what's right for their kids. And again, we're not talking anti-vaccine.
No.
We're talking the decision of the parent.
Yeah, no, I've seen some of the interviews with people who are vaccinating their children on their own schedule that they've decided, and they've chosen what vaccines they want, but they are not okay with this bill because it's forcing the hand and making them have to follow some regimented thing that the government says is for everybody.
Yes.
I've met people who the only vaccine they don't want to do is the Hep B vaccine.
Right.
That's the only one. They're going to do all the other ones. Hep B is not communicable.
Right.
I can't catch it by sitting across from you if you happen to have it, which I doubt, but but I can't catch it.
No.
The only way I can catch it is sexual content because my 1-year-old is going to be having sexual activities or needle sharing. And that my 1-year-old is also going to be doing needle sharing. So I choose that one vaccine I'm not going to do. I now can't send my kids to school. I've done every other one.
Right.
I can't send my kids to school.
Right.
It's kind of...
It's arbitrary.
It is. It is an arbitrary, and that's
Well,
where
it's not up to the drug companies to decide what we're going to do with our children. That's where I object.
Absolutely.
Personally. I do want to represent the people who think it's a good idea. And that's why I'm trying to like sort of talk about it more and be like, okay, so you're trying to be safe. You don't want some other person to get sick and get your kid sick. I can understand that. The concept is that if your kids are vaccinated, then they're going to be protected, right?
Well, the immune compromised is what they're talking about, is the people who can't get vaccinated. But I'll give you an example. There was a chickenpox outbreak in my school. My children were not vaccinated for chickenpox. So I took my kids out. They didn't have any symptoms. They weren't contagious. They stayed home for the entire incubation period of the chickenpox. They didn't get chickenpox. They got to go back to school. There was a second chickenpox outbreak sometime later. I did the same thing again. I took them out. Now, I know because I didn't vaccinate that that's what I have to do to protect those immune compromised. And that is something that could come down as a law. That is a step that doesn't go this far as totally removing them from education. I know that. So the second time I went, okay, that's it, I'm getting them chickenpox. And I got them chickenpox. They all had chickenpox. I infected them.
Did you have a chickenpox party?
I did.
Oh, good.
I had a chickenpox party, but as soon as they were exposed, they were home. They never went anywhere but the house. They hated it, but they never went anywhere in the house. I didn't expose a single other person. They got chickenpox. They got through it. Now they have it. They're done. They're immune.
Less restrictive means, which
That's
is
Less restrictive.
which
Right.
which the whole constitutional argument is there are much less restrictive means.
Right.
For example, AB 2109, which is actually working and it's actually bringing the amount of people who are not fully vaccinated down currently.
Do you want me to explain
Yeah.
it? Okay. AB 29, that's Assembly Bill. This was implemented last year. It was implemented in September. It requires anybody who wants to sign a personal belief to go visit a doctor and hear all of the information and really have a conversation about it. So they can't just sign it and go, yeah. They actually have to have a conversation. So once they have that conversation, they can then go, okay, I'm going to vaccinate or I'm not going to vaccinate. That bill from September to a few months ago had actually already raised the vaccine rates.
Cool.
More parents, after having those conversations, decided to vaccinate than who would have just signed it away.
Yeah.
So it was raising it. So from September, this bill, this new one, was introduced in February. That's 6 months. That's not enough time to test to see if this bill was actually going to raise it to the levels that they want to raise it to.
Right.
She said earlier, we're already at 92%. Herd immunity is between 90 and 95%. We're actually in herd immunity ranges. And this bill
Herd
was-
immunity?
Herd immunity meaning
So all
enough
of us
people
in
are
this
vaccinated.
area are so many people are already vaccinated.
In the state of California, 92% on average are vaccinated. So the idea is that it won't transfer, it'll die down.
And then less than 1% of children entering kindergarten are already vaccinated. So even the children, there's a higher rate
Right.
already.
Okay. So now they're just trying to make it so that everyone has to, basically, unless you want to do homeschooling.
Or you can't have an education. And for somebody like me, I can't homeschool.
Right.
So what am I supposed to do? I can't move out of the state because I'm only licensed practice law in California. I don't have,
Yeah, no,
family to
it's
speak of.
that's
And it's
terrible.
what are we supposed to do? I'm actually one of the lucky ones because I'm educated and I've researched and I have amazing friends to help me out. But there's a lot of people out there who aren't as lucky as me. And there's a lot of people out there that don't have the money they're on Medi-Cal. And they're being forced to do certain things because they're getting government benefits.
Right. And I'm not necessarily saying that, I'm against all vaccines or something. I just want to make that clear.
We're not making that.
Right.
None of us are.
None of us are.
But that's what I think the argument always is that it's an anti-vaxxer.
I hate that
Right?
word.
Anti-vaxxers. But
We're not
but
anti.
We're not.
I'm fully vaccinated. I vaccinate my other son, But the thing that's the scariest to me is the schedule.
Yeah.
And the fact that they can enter in anything extra
Anything they
that they
want.
want. Who knows what that's going to be?
Yeah.
And because of the fact that they are legally, let's talk about that. Somehow they got it passed through the government that the vaccine makers cannot be sued and are not liable
I know, there's a whole
for
separate
anything
court
that
or
happens.
something for them.
Yeah,
That
so
happened
let's
in the
talk
80s.
about this for a second. So, okay, we think it's a great idea for you to go ahead and do 60 different doses of these vaccines. No, we haven't fully tested them. We're not sure if they're fully safe.
And
And
so-
if something happens, guess who's going to have to take care of that child?
You.
The parent.
Right.
Right?
And some of them actually did have mercury in them. I know that was going on for quite a while, and I know they've done a lot to try and take it out.
There's still mercury.
There's
There's
still
still
trace amounts.
mercury. In fact, the flu vaccine, the 2014-2015, if you go and you actually Google it and look at the ingredients, there's mercury right there. They call it something else. What do they call it?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thermosol?
Yes.
Thermosol.
They gave it another name.
They trademarked, well, Eli Lilly invented a preservative and they gave it another name, but it is mercury. It's basically mercury. That's what it is.
Okay.
We can't sue them. So you're forcing me to give my child vaccinations, but if she gets hurt, I can't sue you for it.
What
happens is they have a vaccine court that
It isn't a regular court of law. There is no jury.
So they're
there's
above
no,
the law, basically.
They're sort of above the law.
Yeah.
And you have to file. You have a statute of limitations. If you don't file in 3 years, you can't. You're not allowed to file. I have a friend whose son had seizures,
Just not even.
and he's 12 years old now. He still has an average 30 seizures a night.
30 seizures.
A night. They didn't know about the vaccine court. They didn't find out until he was 5. They're too late. They can't do anything about it because nobody told them. The doctor didn't tell him. Nobody told him, but the doctor said, oh yeah, this is a vaccine injury, but didn't tell him about the court. So now they're supporting their child, and they have to, and they have no choice. And they're like, and they have another perfectly healthy younger sibling. They're not going to vaccinate. They don't, I don't care. I'm not vaccinating this child. I wouldn't either. They have asked for medical exemption. They have been refused. It just, anyway, I'm going to start crying if I get too much more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just think that the general public need to stop buying what the media is saying.
They are paid for by the drug company advertising. I just have to
Right.
say that right away. Like, you're going to a source that's not credible if you're trying to find out about the drug industry.
Exactly. So you've got this topic, right, where parents just need to research out what's right for their children, right? However, they are now not going to be allowed to make that choice. So they say, okay, you have to give them X amount of these different vaccines. We are not liable, right? And if you don't agree with us,
Yeah.
then you have to take your child out of school,
Yeah.
right? But here's the thing. My son is in soccer.
Yeah.
Okay. My son, goes to gymnastics. He goes to the park. He goes to Disneyland quite often, actually. So why is it this huge thing if then the children can go to other places, right? I just heard recently that they're trying to pass a law where all children who have no vaccine records because they're homeless are completely able to go to school, right? So it's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
And it doesn't totally make sense. And what I'm hoping to get from this is for people to research and to find out for themselves and, talk to their senator, talk to their assembly person. We need to get more involved. Before this occurred,
Yeah.
I wasn't really involved with politics and I didn't
Yeah.
fully understand what's happening.
Yeah.
And now that I'm understanding it, I'm like, whoa. And I have to say one thing. These legislators and these people who are trying to pass such things, the pharmaceutical companies, for example, they have awoken a beast. We are mothers, we are fierce. And if you want to mess with our children, it's just like if you see any mammal out there, any bird, any creature, if there's some sort of harm going on with your child,
Yeah.
you will fight till the end.
Yeah,
You will
this
literally
isn't-
fight to death.
It's not
right?
gonna just go away.
So this is not going to go away.
No.
Right? And I want to just reiterate, I am not against vaccines whatsoever.
No,
I am
we're-
against this tyranny.
We're against the government telling you what you can and can't do with your children. That's where
Absolutely.
it scares me, and that's what I just want to say. My last point about this is, where is it going to go next?
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much.
Thank
for
you.
coming
Thank
on
Thank
the
you
show
so
today.
much for having us.
Definitely. Thanks for watching Athena, Laureen, and Andromeda on
The Red Booth!